What's going on, everybody? My word, welcome to the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 373, something like that? My word, what isn't on fire? And it's crazy. Yeah, been running around like a chicken with my head cut off. A lot of stuff going on. Sorry for starting late tonight, but I had to try and get everything as organized as possible. This has been a project, to say the least. But yeah, fun stuff. Glad to have you guys here. Thank you guys for joining me. But yeah, so welcome in. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays, as we get together and we watch the crazy things that are happening around the world and their involvement with the last days that we're currently in right now. It's been absolutely insane. Well, it's been insane for the past couple of years, but it's gotten even more crazy with what's going on with the Middle East and the repercussions and the things that are happening behind the scenes because of it. But yeah, welcome in. Glad to have you here. And yeah, so what's on fire or what's not on fire? What isn't on fire tonight? I can't even go over the list of things that we're going to be going over. There's a ton of stuff. So strap in. I'm going to try and rapid fire through some of this stuff. And just let you guys get the information. Yeah, that's all I can do ultimately with how crazy things are happening. But I'm just picking out what I think is important, what we should pay attention to. Some stuff that I believe is worth debunking along the way. There's a lot of bad information, as we know, when it comes to wartime situations and events like this. The truth is the first thing to die. And we got to remember that. We definitely have to remember that. And there's a lot of bad information and a lot of propagandists out there. I'll tell you what, half the work is just sorting through the noise, honestly. Just trying to sort through all the garbage getting thrown our way. But yeah, we'll go through a bunch of stuff tonight. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Yeah, hopefully everybody is doing well tonight. Hopefully everybody is all right. I am just, man. All right, let's just go ahead and get into some housekeeping because we got a ton of stuff. So let's do that.
Housekeeping?
I think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe. Get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid and like, share, subscribe, I'd certainly appreciate it, especially with all the stuff going on right now. I think is a good opportunity to try and get this out to people who are wondering what on earth is going on. So please like, share, subscribe. If you guys can do me that solid. Also, if you want to, follow along on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming over on Rumble. So make sure you guys head over there if you have that. Telegram post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format. I just kind of throw up on Telegram. So follow along on there if you have that as well. If you don't have Rumble or Telegram, you don't like it, that's cool. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date with everything happening with the Wretched Watchmen world of things. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams. You'll find the announcement page, the free book to download, and all that jazz. So head on over there and bookmark that page so you're always aware of what's going on with that. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. Again, you guys are the ones that make this run. I work for you and I work for the Lord. That's how it goes. And you guys keep this thing running. And I thank you for all of that. And you guys are awesome. So I appreciate you guys. All right. That is housekeeping. All right. You guys ready to get into this stuff? We got a lot of stuff to go over. All right, let's just go ahead and do this. All righty. Let's start out with this. Let's start out with some easy stuff, but important things before we start getting into detailed type information that's worth having an idea about. So let's start off with this. It says Pentagon tells Congress no sign that Iran was going to attack U.S. first. So this is where things start to get interesting, cloudy, and goes to show that the Trump administration is not only a puppet group, but also they lie through their teeth in order to advance the agenda that they have been told that they need to advance. Because what we have going on is we have literally the Pentagon coming out and saying that the Trump administration lied to begin the war in Iran. And so this is pretty significant and worth keeping on tab going forward with this whole situation in the Middle East, which has exponentially grown much larger than I believe what you're being told, along with the fact of it is escalating. The damage and the killing has escalated. It says Trump administration officials acknowledged in closed-door briefings that congressional staff on Sunday that there was no intelligence suggesting Iran planned to attack U.S. forces first. Remember, that's what Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth said, is they had to strike because they believed that Iran was going to strike them. The Pentagon has basically said that that was false. Sunday's remarks to Congress appeared to undercut one of the key arguments for the war made by senior administration officials. They told reporters the day before that President Donald Trump decided to launch the attacks in part because of indicators that Iranians might strike U.S. forces in the Middle East, perhaps preemptively. Trump, one of the officials said, was not going to sit back and allow American forces in the region to absorb attacks. In the briefings, administration officials emphasized that Iran's ballistic missiles and proxy forces in the region posed an imminent threat to U.S. interests, but there's no intelligence about Tehran attacking U.S. forces first. Trump said that the attack, which is expected to run for weeks, aimed to ensure Iran would not have a nuclear weapon, contain its missile program, and eliminate threats to the United States and its allies. He urged Iranians to rise up and topple the government. Now, where the conflict is just so blatant, you even had a post-meeting interview with Marco Rubio, one of the top people at the Trump administration who basically lied about this whole thing. And he came out and confirmed this and said that the United States had to strike first because Israel was going to preemptively strike Iran. And so the United States had to strike first in order to protect themselves because Israel was about ready to start the war with Iran, which then would have started, Iran would have attacked the United States from there. So the idea that Trump said and Pete Hegseth said that Iran was going to strike them first is false. The actual truth of the matter is Israel was going to strike with or without the United States, which then Iran would have struck the United States and drawn them into the war anyways. So the United States decided to strike them first because of that. That is what's going on. So whatever Trump and his officials are telling you is completely false. Completely false. And it was Israel that was going to start the war to begin with. And so that is important when it comes to all the information that we're going to get regarding who started first, who fired first, the timing of this, that, or the other, anything that comes out regarding it. We need to remember that this is actually the reality of the situation, which is important regarding all of this. Also, going along with that, Trump has already come out and blamed Obama and Biden for the war in Iran, which he started. I kid you not. Trump has now come out and blamed this war on Obama and Biden. Trump posted this. This was yesterday. Said, if I didn't terminate Obama's horrendous Iran nuclear deal, Iran would have had a nuclear weapon 3 years ago that was the most dangerous transaction we have ever entered into. And had it been allowed to stand, the world would be an entirely different place right now. You can blame Obama and Sleepy Joe Biden. Thank you, President Trump. So he's literally come out and is now blaming those guys for what he just did today. Keep in mind, this nuclear deal, he supposedly, obliterated last year. Any other news is fake news. So pretty interesting how he's now blaming those guys for that. Also, something else to keep in mind, the White House put out this document for Congress regarding Operation Epic Fury, which again sounds like the next edition of Mountain Dew. It's such a stupid name. even though Trump has called this a war, when this happened, he literally called this a war, which, again, you needs congressional approval. But again, Trump doesn't care about the laws, Congress, or the Constitution. He just does whatever he wants to. And Pete Hegseth called this a war. Both of them called this a war. They put this out. The White House put this out to Congress, saying that it's not a war. It's a major combat operation. So they've now shifted it from war to major combat operation. If that sounds familiar, it's the same thing Russia did when they started the Ukraine situation. Do not call Ukraine invasion a war, Russia tells media and schools. Instead, use special military operation to describe it. They're literally pulling the same propaganda trick that Russia did with the whole Ukraine situation. So even though they declared it a war, they did. It's on video, whether it's AI or not, which I still believe that video is AI. They still called it a war, but now the White House is saying, no, it's a military or combat operation, similar to what Russia did in regards to that. So again, this is a case for them to try and cover themselves, and they're using the same propaganda tactics that Russia did during the whole Ukraine situation. So very interesting with what's going on. So first of all, we've got a situation where Trump said the reason why they attacked is because they had intelligence that Iran was going to attack them first. Completely false. It's now been told by the Pentagon and Marco Rubio that the United States struck Iran first because Israel was going to strike them no matter what, and that would have meant Iran was going to hit the United States, so they had to jump forward. So we got that, and then we got the fact that Trump is now blaming this war that he started on Obama and Biden, and we have the situation where they're doing propaganda where even though they declared it a war, they're now trying to say it's just a major combat operation, similar to what Russia did. So again, these are the lies. These are the fabrications, the propaganda that continues to get pushed. And these are going to be the first things, not the clarifications that we just went over, but the churches and the MAGA groups and the pastors and the prophecy people and all these people that are basically gobbling up this Trump administration propaganda. They're taking the false stuff that's being fed to them by Trump because they just believe whatever he says, and they're pushing that out into their networks in order to make sure that everybody follows along with that, rather than seeking the truth, whether it's black, white, whether it's red, blue, whether it's whatever. The fact is we should be hunting for the truth on this stuff. And then we've got, pastors and prophecy teachers out there that continue to go out there and say, I'm not shilling for Trump, and then go on for 30 minutes to 45 minutes, literally shilling for Trump. It's amazing how that works. Just last night, Pete Garcia saying, I'm not shilling for Trump, and then continued to boast Trump for the next 20 minutes. It's amazing how that works. So just keep that in mind going forward. Like I said, the first thing to die in war is the truth, and you guys know that for sure. I know you guys are smart enough to recognize that you can't believe all this stuff that's coming out, especially from an administration who, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but both left media and right media have come out and said Trump has told more lies than any United States president in history. That's both left media and right media that has made that claim. During his time as president, he's told over 30,000 lies, more than any president in United States history. Pretty interesting. Oh, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. All right. I had a family member call me a liberal for praying about no drafts for my kiddo. Sounds a lot like 1930s Germany over there. Yeah. All right. How about this one, you guys? You see this? Trump won't rule out boots on the ground. United States boots on the ground in Iran. Donald Trump will not rule out sending American troops into Iran after launching a massive bombing campaign that the president said could last several weeks or longer. Keep in mind, when this thing first started, it was initially going to be a weekend deal, 48 hours. Then it turned into 1 week. Then it turned into 2 weeks. Then it became 4 to 5 weeks. And now Trump is saying that we've got armament to last us in a forever war. Man, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Am I right? Am I right? The president told the New York Post that he doesn't have the yips when it comes to sending Americans to war. And Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth told reporters that the administration won't be dumb about it. Yeah, right. There's another lie. But neither leaders are ruling out the possibility that American armed forces could be on the ground in conflict that experts warn could spill out into a wider war with destabilizing repercussions throughout the region and beyond. And we're right at that edge. I'm going to show you a lot of stuff tonight that says that we're right there. Without clear objectives and with dubious justifications, the administration is seeking regime implosion, fueled by Trump's wishful thinking that a relentless military campaign will open the door for Iranian people to fill a power vacuum, according to Trita Parsi, co-founder of Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft and Foreign Policy. Trump's mission dovetails with Israel's hope to take Iran off the geopolitical chessboard. We know that won't happen. We know that won't happen. Why? Because Scripture tells us that Iran plays a very important part in the future. And so we know that Israel and Iran will not be taken off the chessboard. They will, in fact, continue to be in high position, specifically because God says they're going to be, and we'll use them. So we know for a fact that Iran will not get taken off the chessboard. In fact, we know that Iran will still be there and have a new leadership that will be much more bloodthirsty towards Israel. That's important. So Trump's mission dovetails with Israel's hope to take Iran off the geopolitical chessboard, but the difficulty the administration is having is not necessarily that they don't have a goal, it's just that they can't find justification for it, Parsi told reporters Monday. They're grasping at straws. So Trump has not ruled out boots on the ground. Well, neither has Hegseth. Hegseth doesn't rule out U.S. troops in Iran. Nation's top military officials made the case for why the U.S. needed to attack. Now, it says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth declined to rule out deploying American ground forces in Iran during his first public comments on the joint American and Israeli military operation. The Pentagon chief appearing at the Pentagon on Monday with Chair of Joint Chiefs General Dan Kane made the case that the strikes launched over the weekend have no timetable for wrapping up. 48 hours, 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks. Now, there's no timetable for wrapping it all up. And they are meant to destroy Iran's conventional and nuclear weapons programs. When asked specifically about putting American ground troops in the region, Hegseth said that while there are none there now, I'm seeing a lot of stuff that tells me that there are indeed special forces, United States special forces in Iran. Can't necessarily confirm it, but there's a lot of stuff that says that they are. We're not going to go into the exercise of what will or will not do. The open timetable, along with the possibility of deploying ground forces, stands in contrast to President Donald Trump's campaign promises that he would avoid any new wars of choice. Trump, in his election night victory speech in November 2024, capped his campaign by telling his supporters, "I am not going to start a war. I am going to stop wars." Well, in Donald Trump's mind, Obama and Biden started this war, even though we know the fact is he did. Amazing how that works. Now, I find it fascinating that we continue to get told by Trump and Hegseth that their main goal is to destroy Iran's conventional and nuclear weapons program, but currently sitting on the White House website from June 25th, 2025, it says Iran's nuclear facilities have been obliterated and suggestions otherwise are fake news. So they're saying that this war is to go out and take out Iran's nuclear capabilities, but that's fake news according to the Trump administration from 2025 that says that they were already obliterated. Guys, am I going crazy? I don't think I'm going crazy. But it sure seems like we're getting the complete runaround and nothing but lie after lie after lie about what is going on, getting drawn into full-on guns a-blazing situations with this Trump administration. But yet, we still have the church that's doing everything that they possibly can to try and cover for him. It's truly remarkable. It's truly remarkable. It's either the churches and the pastors, and I'm just going to be just blunt. I know some people don't like it when I'm blunt. I don't care. I'm just going to be blunt. But these churches and these pastors, there's truly only two options. One, they are that stupid and blind that they can't see it, or they're propagandists pushing their narrative. Either one tells me that they're not fit for the pulpit. This isn't, one of those things where I'm just frustrated and trying to, be on a pedestal or anything like that. This is just basic. This is just basic because it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing in the church? Like I just saw something this past week that Jack Hibbs did. You guys can go and watch it. It's his prophecy update from this past week. You guys can, it's absolutely atrocious what he's saying. But on there, he said, if you guys want to take out the Dems, the Democrats, let's just go ahead and invite some Muslims to this country and they'll take care of them. And while his congregation applauded and whistled, basically calling for, let's bring in terrorists to murder Democrats. And then he said, oh, and some of the Republicans can go too. He said that from his pulpit in his church with his congregation going buck wild in applause for calling for terrorist attacks on Democrats. A person who claims to be a pastor. And Christians defend that man. They defend what he teaches when it's very clear he's on somebody's payroll and does not fit the position of being a pastor in a church. That's what I'm fired up about. That's what I get angry about. Because that is somebody who's supposed to be somebody in a spot where the world looks at him as a Christian. And everybody else who is not a Christian looks and listens to what he just said from his pulpit and says, why on earth would I want to follow that? Why on earth would I listen to you about Jesus? I don't want any part of that. And so they turn from Christ, all because he needs to go sit up on his stool under his cult following and sit up there and talk about killing political opposition with Muslims. He opens his fat mouth to push his agenda, pushing people away from Jesus. Jack Hibbs is a disaster of Christian representation. That's all that needs to be said. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. We have this. This says, questions mount in Congress over Iran's war costs, risks, and exit plan. says tensions flared as questions mounted as the U.S. Capitol on Tuesday over the Trump administration's shifting rationale for war with Iran as lawmakers demand answers over the strategy, exit plan, and costs to Americans in lives and dollars in what is quickly becoming a widening Middle East conflict. Trump officials arrived at the Capitol for a second day of closed-door briefings, this time with all members of the House and Senate as the administration tries to stave off a looming war powers resolution vote intended to restrict Trump's inability to continue the joint U.S.-Israel campaign against Iran. Rubio pushed back on his own suggestion a day earlier that Trump decided to strike Iran because Israel was ready to act first. Instead, he said Trump made the decision to attack this weekend because it presented a unique opportunity with maximum chances for success. There's no way in the world that this terrorist regime was going to get nuclear weapons, not under Donald Trump's watch. Again, currently sitting on the White House website. From June 25th, 2025, it says that Trump obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons. Any other suggestion is fake news. So again, you're being lied to again. They're proving themselves liars because of what they currently have on their White House website and what they're saying now. Senators spent the morning grilling Trump officials during an Armed Service Committee hearing over Rubio's claim Monday that the president, believing that Israel was ready to act, decided it was better for the United States to launch a preemptive strike to prevent Iran's potential retaliation on American bases and interests abroad. And several United States military bases over there in the Middle East have been destroyed. Yep. Senator Angus King, the independent from Maine, said it's very disturbing that Trump took the U.S. to war because Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted to bomb Iran. And defense official Elbridge Colby told senators the president directed the military campaign to destroy Iranian missiles and deny the country nuclear weapons. Again, go to the website. Trump himself disputed the idea that Israel had forced his hand. In his own Oval Office remarks, he said, "I might have forced their hand." So now Trump is saying that he forced Israel's hand to attack. It's ridiculous. Trump has suggested the war could drag on and has not ruled out sending American troops to Iran. He says, "I am more fearful than ever we will be putting boots on the ground," said Senator Richard Blumenthal. The reason why there's so much consternation on our side is because President Trump has not given us a clear reason why he is in Iran, said Senator Christian Gillibrand. If he wants to declare a war on Iran, that is the job and responsibility of the Congress under the Constitution. Trump is calling for Iranians to use the opportunity to take back their country, has acknowledged the uncertainty. Most of the people we have in mind are dead. Why? Because they killed them, Trump said Tuesday. He also panned the idea of elevating Reza Pahlavi, the exiled crown prince of Iran's last Shah, to take over in Iran. So again, we got a lot more talk. A lot more talk coming in saying that the possibility of putting American troops on the ground is growing. But there's some other stuff going on that says that they might be calling in other groups to stir up a gigantic powder keg civil war situation in Iran, creating complete chaos, similar to what they did in Iraq, similar to what they did in Syria, similar to what they did in Afghanistan, and so on and so on. It just keeps happening. So we take this, and we need to pay attention to the possibility that they're about ready to start sending in another group of armed proxy groups. Trump calls Kurdish leaders in Iran. Trump calls the Kurdish leaders in Iran war effort. We're at this point now. If anybody knows anything about the Kurds, they are some of the most gullible groups of people that you've ever seen, because they continue to get used over and over and over again. They continue to get promised things by certain groups, whether it's the United States, whether it's Israel, whether it's Turkey, whether it's Pakistan. They continue to get told, if you do this, we'll give you this. We promise we'll do this if you do this for us. And they continue to get used as a war group as just, mercenaries, and then they never get what they're promised, but yet they keep believing these governments and acting on it. It's insane. So now the United States is getting ready to call on them to go into Iran. So President Trump spoke on the phone with Kurdish leaders in Iraq on Sunday to discuss the U.S.-Israel war with Iran and what might come next. The Kurds have thousands of soldiers along the Iran-Iraq border and control strategic areas that could be significant as the war develops. Iraq's Kurds have also close ties to Iran's Kurdish minority. Trump spoke to leaders from two main Kurdish factions in Iraq, Masoud Barzani and Bafel Talabani, a day after he authorized the Saturday bombing campaign. The calls were the culmination of months of behind-the-scenes lobbying by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Another source said Israel has had close security, military, and intelligence ties with the Kurds in Syria, Iraq, and Iran for decades. Netanyahu, who had been relentless in urging strikes on the regime change in Iran, first advocated for the Kurds in a White House meeting with Trump. When he first came over and sat with Trump for hours, you would have thought Netanyahu had it all figured out, the official said. He had the successor planned out. He had the Kurds all figured out, two sets of Kurdish groups here and there. This many people are going to rise up, the official said. So, you know how we've noticed, we've mentioned that Netanyahu has taken more trips to the White House during this administration, Trump's second term here, than ever in the history of ever. He went, I think, 7 times during this first term, is because they were planning this whole situation. And Netanyahu behind the scenes was already working on trying to get the Kurds involved with an uprising in Iran for that time. Now, we don't necessarily know the timing of this. Was this setting up for the Kurds to come in after the bombing? Or is it possible that they were looking to start possibly the Iranian uprising in the street ahead of time to justify dropping the bombs and then bringing in more after the fact after that? We don't know the details on that, but it certainly is a possibility that, and again, I'm just saying it's a possibility that the whole Iranian protests thing that happened was completely orchestrated in order to get this war kicked off. It's a possibility. I'm not saying it's for sure, but it is a possibility. So something to keep in mind on that. On Sunday, the Kurdistan Freedom Party, a Kurdish Iranian opposition group based in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, accused Iran of punishing campaign of missile and drone strikes. 6 days before the war began, 5 dissident Kurdish groups sheltering in Iraq announced the formation of the coalition of political forces in Iranian Kurdistan to fight Iran. The Kurds have a hostile relationship with Turkey, a U.S. NATO ally, which could be a complication. That's another factor to keep in mind. Turkey is still sitting there. I don't believe at this moment in time, I do not believe that Turkey would get involved with this situation in any way. But if you start getting the Kurds involved, and we know Turkey does not want them having their own land, there's a chance that maybe something down the future could happen in regards to that. So, yeah. Fascinating situations. Again, there's a lot of, and it's one of those things where, because I know there's some people, the fact that I even mentioned the possibility that the Iranian uprising, the protests and stuff like that was an orchestrated event, the possibility of it. People, it's like, why would you say that? Why would you take that away from the Iranian? It's like, it's not something that I'm taking away from them. I'm just telling you that we live in a world right now where stuff like that, you just cannot take it at face value. And most people take stuff at face value that bends and wraps around the beliefs that they currently have. So for those who mainly sit on the pro-Israel side of things, they view what happened in Iran, and nothing will ever change their mindset on the possibility of that being orchestrated. And again, we don't know. I'm not claiming one way or the other. I'm just saying, don't write that possibility off, because that could have been the perfect thing to instigate what we're seeing now. And so that's something to keep in mind. We need to make sure that we don't let our biases change what we are currently seeing happen in reality, or take away the possibility of things happening in order to set off a domino effect of other events. That's very important that we hang on to, because so many people lose track of that, and we need to keep it on. And I'm telling you right now that what is going on within the church and the prophecy community and stuff like that, it's just become a propaganda arm. That's all it's become. And it's one of those things where I just got to say, it's clear that Hope for Our Times has just become straight propaganda now, because they're not even trying when it comes to actually figuring out what's going on. They're just relaying information straight from whatever they find beneficial without doing any research whatsoever and claiming it to be true when it's completely false. Like, there was just one thing reported on that it was straight from Jewish news organization that said that the United States and Israel had destroyed 50% of Iran's missile launchers. Well, first of all, doubtful. Second of all, that's impossible to be able to determine at this point. But they read it as a matter of fact that this is what it is. And it's like, nobody has any clue. And it's doubtful because of what's going on with underground bases and in the mountains, the tunnels that they have. And these launchers, if people don't realize, are just pickup trucks and box trucks. That's how they manage to move them around. And how many they can take a fleet of regular pickup trucks, Chevy pickup trucks, and change them into launchers overnight. And so you're going to say that you've destroyed 50% of those? Doubtful. It's propaganda. There's no critical thinking. There's no fact checking on any. I hate that term, but it's true. Just go and do some research on it, and you'll sit there and go, there's no way we can determine how many launchers that they've destroyed at this point. But yet it's being pushed as a matter of fact. And again, we have to be so unbelievably careful when it comes to what we're believing in regards to this stuff. Again, half of what I'm doing is I'm trying to cut through the noise and just figure out what I can confirm. The amount of junk that's out there is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So we have to be very careful about that. Now, if we take a look at this, this is also talking about the Kurdish thing, but this is coming from Israel Hayam. And if you guys remember, Israel Hayam is owned by Miriam Adelson. Miriam Adelson, of course, is one of top 3 Trump's largest donators. She's from the Israeli empire, and she's one of Trump's handlers. And so, of course, her propaganda group is putting this out. This is the American-Israeli plan. Chaos will push for coup against Revolutionary Guards. Chaos. Their goal is to go in there and just stir up chaos, arm a whole bunch of groups, and send them in there to just destroy everything. Guess who gets killed in the wake of all that? Innocent civilians. Innocent civilians. Yes, I know there's some Christians out there that claim that there's not a single Iranian person that's innocent and they all support the government. That's false as all get out. There's innocent lives that get destroyed because of this. Look at Iraq. Look at Afghanistan. Look at Syria. That's what they want to do here. Says Washington has been engaging Kurdish fighters, Balak operatives, and opposition factions inside Iran as part of a coordinated push towards full regime change, while intelligence assessments warn that the Revolutionary Guards are digging in for a long fight. The United States have been intensifying efforts to forge a broad opposition coalition inside Iran with the explicit goal of achieving what American and Israeli strategists describes as a central objective of any strike on the regime. It's a complete replacement. But we're being told from the United States side that it's not a regime change war. So again, what is it? What is it? It's ridiculous. According to intelligence and assessment sources, the American effort have been focused not only on ethnic groups such as the Kurds and the Balakis, but also aimed primarily at recruiting support from within the ranks of Iran's regular army, from public figures and local leadership, and even from senior regime officials considered relatively moderate. This is on February 22nd, 5 Iranian Kurdish parties, led by the Democratic Party of Iranian Kurdistan, formed a joint coalition with the declared aim of toppling the Islamic regime. The coalition fields Peshmerga fighters who have undergone training in Iraq, are also well-versed in the mountainous terrain along the border between the two countries. During Operation Roaring Lion, several strikes were carried out in Iranian strongholds along the border, with the aim of weakening Tehran's grip on the region and potentially enabling an armed Kurdish uprising. Another ethnic group waging a sustained insurgency is the Balakis, a Sunni minority straddling the territories of Iran, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, who seek self-determination and autonomy. It's the same song and dance over and over and over. And even though the Trump administration is selling it to you as something completely different, and the MAGA groups and the Fox Newses and the pastors and the churches and all these guys are taking that at face value, what we are witnessing is exactly what has happened in the past. Now, again, I still hold to the belief, and this is based upon scripture, I still hold to the belief that the next regime that will take control of Iran, which I believe is still going to be a part of the same old regime, it's just going to be a new face, much more bloodthirsty and hard-lined. They're going to be more fit when it comes to the position and qualifications of what's going to occur prophetically in the future with Iran. Again, Iran's not going to become so just mosaic and scattered into chaos. There's gonna still be something there for the future prophecy that's to come. And we need to remember that. We need to keep that in mind. Don't just base it off of whatever we're being told with events. We need to stick to the scripture and understand that Iran still plays a major role in the future when it comes to what happens with Israel. And so that is something we need to remember. And I've got some information on that possible leadership that we'll get to tonight. All right. We lost anybody? Are we still good? I know I've just been kind of flying through some stuff, ranting on some stuff, but I think it's all stuff that we got to discuss. Okay. Now, when it comes to expansion. So we've talked about how they want to start doing insurgency. They want to start getting the Kurds involved from Iraq. They want to start getting the Kurds involved from Pakistan. They want to start getting that stuff involved. It's kind of spreading everything out. We understand that there's been the Gulf strikes that are happening. We understand Cyprus got hit. We'll get to that in a second. It's expanding. It's escalating, and it's expanding. Well, it's expanding even further because Israeli ground incursion, that's right, not airstrikes, not missiles, ground incursion, boots, Israeli ground incursion into Lebanon as front boils over amid wider war. Hezbollah says Israel wanted open war, so let it be an open war, adding that the era of patience has ended. So here we go. Expansion. The entire sandbox is going up in flames right now. It says the Israeli military. Can I make that bigger? I can. Make that so you guys can read it. The Israeli military said its troops are operating in southern Lebanon in a ground incursion as it continues strikes on what is described in a statement as a forward defense measure along the border, with another front igniting in regional war prompted by United States Israel attacks on Iran. Lebanese military source on Tuesday said that the army pulled its troops back from the border to ensure their safety amid an escalation in Israeli attacks. So the Lebanese military withdrew, and then the Israeli military went in. Earlier, Lebanon's state-run Lebanon state-run national news agency said that the Lebanese army is evacuating advanced positions along the border with Israel, with the Reuters news agency reporting that it's withdrawn from at least 7 forward operating positions along the border. Senior Hezbollah official said that the recent Israeli attacks have left the group with no option but to return to resistance. The move comes as Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, said Israel's army, that's a lot of Israel, Israel's army had been instructed to advance and seize additional controlling areas in Lebanon to prevent firing on Israeli border settlements following an earlier deployment of troops to the border. It says Israel also bombed Lebanon's capital Beirut for the second consecutive day as Hezbollah claimed an attack on an airbase in northern Israel. New Israeli air raids on Tuesday afternoon hit Beirut's southern suburbs of Daya after at least 3 more attacks in the same area that morning. Lebanon's state news agency said a new series of intense Israeli airstrikes targeted the suburb and caused extensive damage to buildings. If we jump down, it says this is an interesting bit of news. If they manage to shut down Hezbollah in Lebanon, this might be an opportunity for some peace over in that area. So this is something to watch. It says Lebanon's president said that the government's move to immediately ban Hezbollah's military activity is final, declaring there's no turning back from the decision. This is something to watch. We don't know, but something to watch. As President Aoun said that the cabinet's ruling obliges Hezbollah to hand over its weapons to the state, underlying that the authority to decide matters of war and peace rests solely with Beirut. In a statement posted on Twitter, Aoun described Mondays as a move that would preserve the right of the Lebanese state alone and no other to hold the decision of war and peace. Interesting. Will it happen? God knows. So we'll see. But that is an interesting tidbit. If the Lebanese government is working jointly with Israel to take out Hezbollah, that could be an interesting thing to watch. So, all right. All right, let's go ahead and move on to this. If you guys want to talk more about expansion, how about getting Syria involved with all this? Syria deploys thousands of troops, rockets to Lebanon border. So now we've got Syria moving stuff around. They haven't gotten involved, but now they're moving stuff around specifically to the Lebanese border. So Syria has reinforced its border with Lebanon with rocket units and thousands of troops, 8 Syrian and Lebanese sources said on Tuesday, as the conflict spread in the region, including between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. The sources included 5 Syrian military officials, a Syrian security official, and 2 Lebanese security officials who spoke on condition of being anonymous. The Syrian officers said that the Syrian reinforcement operation began in February, but sped up in recent days. A Syrian officer told Reuters that military formations from several Syrian army divisions, including the 52nd and 84th, have expanded their presence along the border in western Homs countryside and south of Tartus. Now, why is this interesting? It's interesting because of who is currently who's currently president in Syria right now. Remember that Al-Qaeda dude who had a warrant, not a warrant, but a bounty on him, one of the largest bounties ever in the United States history, because he was one that went and slaughtered Christians and U.S. military, and all of a sudden he ended up in the White House with Trump, and Trump was smiling and shaking his hand and giving him the position of president of Syria and all that. That's right. We have a puppet leader currently as president in Syria. And if you guys don't remember, Trump, I brought this up a couple episodes ago, Trump admitted that he picked and placed al-Julani for president of Syria. Let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth.
Different topic, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time, but all I can say is that the president of Syria, who I essentially put there.
The president of Syria, who I essentially put there.
President of Syria, who I essentially put there, is doing a phenomenal job. He's a rough guy. He's not a choir boy. A choir boy couldn't do it. But Syria is coming together, really coming together well. And thus far, he's been very good to the Kurds. Yeah.
And we also get that little tidbit there at the end. Syria good with the Kurds. So what you are witnessing, if you don't know how this stuff works, what you are witnessing is you are literally witnessing controlled proxy groups getting their orders from their handlers. In this case, it would be the United States, who controls some groups of Kurds and the president of Syria, and they're getting their marching orders to do what they need to do. And so the fact that this terrorist president of Syria, who was placed in office by Trump after killing Christians and United States military, basically is moving their military to the border of Lebanon, most likely because he's being told to. By who? The same handlers that are controlling Trump. Pretty interesting. Pretty interesting how all that's happening. Oh my goodness. That's what I mean by it's one of those things where if we take the narrative that we're supposed to be told, all of this stuff just happens to be random happenstance of people working independently, and all of a sudden these things just start happening. But for the most part, and yeah, there's unpredictability and things go off rails and stuff like that, but for the most part, all these groups and leaders and stuff are all occupied. All occupied. So I know, again, sometimes it's hard. If you're just hearing this for the first time, I understand it's hard to believe, because you're sitting there going, there's no possible way, even though this world might not be, cotton candy and rainbows and unicorns farting cupcakes and stuff like that. The fact is it's a lot more dark, a lot more sinister, and a lot more deceiving than I think people really, truly realize. Whether they want to believe it or not, there's some people that they don't want to believe it. They try and stay as ignorant as possible, because the old saying of ignorance is bliss is true. I mean, you're still ignorant, but what you don't know, you don't really have to worry about, right? I'm one of those people where it's like, well, I don't want to be that. First of all, we're not called to be like that. We're called in Scripture to make sure that we acquire knowledge. The Lord wants us to acquire these things, not only for our benefit, but it's also one of those things where it allows us to be true watchmen, as we are commanded to do as well in the last days. So if you're just hearing this for the first time, I urge you, don't write it off. Don't put your head in the sand. This is the world we live in. This is the world we live in. Now, there's another aspect that I want you guys to keep an eye on as well. Bahrain. Yeah. There's an uprising in Bahrain, with pro-Iran clashes breaking out as Iran claims U.S. strike. This is definitely something we need to keep an eye on. This clashes broke out between pro-Iran demonstrators and security forces on Bahrain's Sitra Island, as Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had targeted a United States airbase in the Gulf Kingdom. Images of the clashes on Sitra Island between pro-Iran demonstrators and security forces circulated in Bahrain's local media and on social media platforms. Security forces detained some individuals who took part in the pro-Iran demonstration. says in a written statement, Bahrain's Interior Ministry and individuals involved in serious crimes threatening public security were taken into custody. The ministry said some detainees that shared videos expressing sympathy for Iranian attacks, and that since the start of the Iran's attacks against Bahrain, the Cybercrime Directorate had identified and arrested individuals involved in serious crimes threatening public security. It said that those detained used artificial intelligence to produce fabricated video portraying homes as if they had been damaged, shared the footage on social media, and aimed to mislead public and frighten citizens. But we don't know that for a fact, even though that's what the Bahrain government is telling us, that, oh, no. This stuff is fake. It's AI videos. It's false. The damage that's being videotaped is not correct, and so on and so forth. And so these people are being arrested. But it's interesting because we don't know that for sure, because Bahrain is one of the Gulf states that put it out there that said anybody who is videotaping or recording anything or posting pictures of damage or anything like that will be imprisoned, because they don't want any of that information getting out. Again, there's been a whole situation where certain Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and Bahrain have all put out blocks on any of this stuff getting out. Israel has done the same thing. They don't want any video, images, information getting out about the damage that is being done in their country. Now, it's all under the guise of, well, if that video goes out, then the Iranians know where to strike because they know where people are at and whatnot. No, they know where to strike anyways. That's garbage. They just don't want the true damage and true information of what's happening to their countries getting out to the public. They don't want the truth getting out. So when it comes to these videos that they claim are AI, we don't know if it's actually real and the government's trying to say that they're not, or we don't know if they are fake or AI or videos from years ago from a different location that they're claiming is happening now. We don't know. Again, that's why I don't really share many videos on here, because it's one of those things where it's like, what on earth can you actually believe regarding that stuff? But that is a very interesting situation happening in Bahrain, with some uprising happening, which I think might play a bigger part in the future. I'll go over that a little bit later. I got some more stuff on that I'll show you. Along with that, yeah, Proton Girl, seeing is definitely not believing. Not in this day and age, I'll tell you what. That's why this is so difficult to try and figure out what's true and what's not, because we live in the information age. Everything that you would want to know is at your fingertips, and you could search it up. But it's for that very reason that shows us that while we live in the intelligence age or the information age, the truth is that much more difficult to come by. The more we have access to information, the less information we actually have. Fascinating. What about this? Yeah, Patrick, I am so lost trying to follow the news right now. Yeah, join the club, man. Now, this is fascinating. Military officials question fortifications at site where U.S. troops were killed in Iranian strike. Now, as we go through this, let me be upfront with this, because I know the first thing that'll come out from people who support Trump or what's going on in the Middle East right now will say that's fake news. Well, first of all, it's coming from CBS. CBS News is practically owned by the Trump administration. If you didn't know what happened not too long ago, David Ellison, Larry Ellison's son, who owns Paramount, bought the rights for CBS. So the Ellison family, who is basically involved with Trump on every level when it comes to installing a surveillance network, biometric network in the United States, they control CBS. And the editor-in-chief is Barry Weiss, who worships the very ground that Trump walks on. So CBS is indeed now state-run media. So if you're going to say fake news, then you're basically going to say the Trump administration is lying because this is their news network. Now that we got that out of the way, let's see what's going on with this. Military officials question fortification at site where U.S. troops were killed in Iranian strike. It says the first American service members to die in the United States-Israeli war with Iran were killed in an apparent Iranian drone attack on a makeshift office space in Kuwait. 3 U.S. military officials with direct knowledge of Iran's attack told CBS News. Now, they start off saying with the first American service members to die. I got to be honest with you. Again, just like we don't know how many Iranian launchers have been destroyed, even though we're getting told 50% of them have been destroyed. I can almost guarantee, even though I don't have direct knowledge, I can almost guarantee that this idea that only 6 United States Americans have been killed so far is probably fake. That number is probably much higher. Now, again, I can't prove it. I can't provide you proof on that matter, but just what I have seen happening over there, there's no way only 6 Americans have been killed. There's just no way. It's got to be higher. It says at least 6 Americans were killed in the strike on a tactical operations center at the Shaiba port in Kuwait. It says, but the 3 U.S. military officials questioned the assertion that the building was adequately fortified after Pete Hegseth said that the building was completely fortified and ready for defense. The 3 U.S. military officials questioned that. And they told CBS News that the operations center was a triple-wide trailer made into an office space, a common setup at U.S. bases abroad. The trailer's only fortification were T-walls, which are 12-foot wall steel-reinforced concrete barriers used to protect military personnel from explosions, rocket attack, and shrapnel. But T-walls could not protect the facility from an overhead strike. 2 officials told CBS News that the strike appeared to hit dead center on the top of the building. Prior to the attack, there were discussions on the ground about whether the tactical operations center in question should not have been used, as it concentrated too many U.S. troops in a location that wasn't defendable. 2 of the 3 sources told CBS News that they did not recall hearing the warning sirens that are commonly associated with counter-battery systems designed to detect incoming enemy ordnance that ultimately killed the service members. They also said that the warning siren had worked all week prior to the strike on the Tactical Operations Center, but in prior incidences, some of the drones were already inside the base before the siren would sound. Additionally, 2 sources said that there were no American counter-rocket artillery and mortar systems at Shaiba Port that could be used to bring down incoming drones or other deadly munitions. Kuwait had interceptors in the facility, but it's unclear whether those were actually employed. Requests were made for more capabilities to defend incoming drones, but those additional resources never came. One source told CBS News, we basically had no drone defeat capability. So according to these Army officials who have direct knowledge of what went down regarding the death of these military men, they were left in a trailer with no radar, defective warning sirens, and no anti-drone capability, and they got a direct strike directly on top of their building. But Pete Hegseth said that was fully defensive and capable. Interesting. Interesting, too, that just recently Trump, during a press conference, came out and said that this is probably going to extend and more United States American lives are probably going to be lost. But that's just war. That's what he said publicly. That's this guy that everybody loves, that we claim is, so endearing to the military. He basically said more American lives are probably going to be lost. That's just war. And that was it. Nonchalantly. Yeah, People are going to die. Who cares? Yeah, Patrick Starr, that's just the way it is. Yeah, you saw it. And then Pete Hegseth said that this place was fully defense capable, and U.S. military have come out and said that no, it's not. And they made requests for defensive countermeasures, and nothing came. That's how this goes. Again, we are peasants. We are cannon fodder. We are collateral damage and nothing more to move these people's agenda forward. That's all it is. I do find this interesting because I've made this example before. It said, they also said that the warning siren had worked all week prior to the strike on the Tactical Operations Center. But prior to the incidents, some of the drones were already inside the base before the siren would sound. What's our job as watchmen? We're supposed to be upon the wall, watching outside, and the moment we see the enemy, the moment we see a threat, we are to sound the alarm for those inside the base, inside the walls. When we don't seek the truth, when we let the narrative, when we let propaganda, when we let bias, when we let all of these things consume us and dictate what we believe to be the truth, we are like the defective sirens, where we don't even start wailing until the enemy is already inside the base. That's why I continue almost every single podcast sound like a broken record, where I continue to say that over and over and over again, because it is so ridiculously important that we don't allow ourselves to dictate what is true, because then we fail at warning when the enemy is coming. We allow the enemy within the base and don't start saying anything until it's already in there devouring our brothers and sisters, already devouring our mission field. Just like these defective sirens that didn't go off until the drone had already killed. Again, that's why I sound like a broken record. But it's so incredibly important. And unfortunately, those who claim to be watchmen are doing just that, where they don't even say anything until the enemy is already inside the walls. That doesn't mean that we stop the enemy. Let me make sure that we understand that. That doesn't mean that we stop the enemy. We can't stop what's coming. But our goal isn't to stop. Our goal as the watchmen is to warn. And we've done our job. If we warn and those inside the walls don't prepare accordingly, the blood is on their hands. But if we are asleep and we don't warn and the enemy comes in, one scratch, their blood is on our hands. Take that command seriously. Please take it seriously. All right, so this next one, I had some people asking about this, if it's true, if it's not. I'm just going to give you the best on what I could find here. So I'm sure some of you guys saw this. The most bitter news, Iran reels as more than 100 children, it's an all-girls school, reportedly killed in school bombing. I believe it was 108 schoolgirls killed in this building. Said the building appears to be among many devastated in Trump's major combat operations as long-expected attacks arrive. Says at one elementary school, according to Iran's state-controlled media, they arrived to find devastation as at least 100 children had been killed in the strike on I can't pronounce this, Shahira Tayabe schools in Minab. That's the best I got. Southern Iran. The Mizan news agency reported with dozens more accounted for. In one video circulating on social media purportedly showing the immediate aftermath of the strike, smoke rises from the burnout walls and debris lies spread across the road. Hundreds of onlookers gathered at the site, some in obvious distress. Screams can be heard in the background. The report of the bombing, its death toll, and the video sources could not be independently verified by The Guardian. Persian fact-checking service Factnama was able to cross-reference that video with other photographs of the school site and concluded that the video was authentic. Reuters said it also verified the footage as being from the school. The school appears to be adjacent to a Revolutionary Guards barracks. If the death toll is confirmed, the school bombing would be the largest mass casualty event of the U.S.-led attack so far. So, I'll be honest, this is one of those things where I don't know what's going on. There's so much conflicting reports. I don't even know. I just don't. What I did come across, however, 10 cactus wren, and what are the odds these children knew Jesus as their savior? Well, from my perspective, from where I sit, the ages that these girls would be, they fall underneath the age of accountability, so they would all be with Jesus right now. So if this is legit, all of those children are with our Savior. So that's something to hang on to. It is. That's something to definitely hang on to. But again, with this, I don't necessarily know all the facts on it. But what I did find that kind of confirms it and kind of confirms who did it. It bears weight for me, at least. This is from Elon Levy, who is the former spokesman for the State of Israel. So he's heavily connected. Former spokesman for the State of Israel. He said, the Minib school incident is an extremely tragic story. It seems to be the result of faulty intelligence because the school was on a site that used to be part of an adjacent IRGC base that was bombed. In any case, Israeli forces weren't active in the area and CENTCOM is investigating, so don't you dare try to pin this on us. What he's saying is he's basically confirming that they did bomb the school. And it was result of faulty intelligence about the location. And basically what he's doing is he's blaming the United States for bombing it, claiming that Israel had nothing to do with it. That's basically what he's saying. And again, this is from this former spokesman of the State of Israel. To me, that bears a lot of weight. That says it probably did happen, and it was the United States and or Israel that bombed it. So, beyond that, I don't have any information. I know there's a few people asking if it's true or not. That's all I got for you. I don't know. That's one. There's a lot of smoke. So, I don't have anything for that one. All right, let's keep this going. We still got a lot of stuff to do. We gotta move. We gotta keep going. Cyprus slams UK after Akrotiri. I think that's how you say it. I could be wrong. Akrotiri drone strike forces locals to flee. The government in Nicosia Nicosia will make a formal diplomatic complaint and didn't rule out renegotiating the status of British bases in Cyprus. So yes, even Cyprus has been hit. You want to talk about expansion? Here it is. Cyprus on Monday suggested that poor communication by the UK government led to the drone attack on the British airbase in Akrotiri and didn't rule out renegotiating the use of the base. The government at Nicosia argued that a perceived lack of clarity regarding the use of British bases on the island, which the UK has maintained since abandoning colonial control of Cyprus, effectively dragged the island into unfolding crisis in the Middle East. Shahed type unmanned aerial vehicle, that's their drones that they use, hit Britain's Royal Air Force Base at Akrotiri in Cyprus just after midnight Monday, while more drone strikes targeted the base were successfully intercepted during the day. While the source of the drone strike is far from unconfirmed, the local media is saying it probably came from Lebanon. A senior commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has threatened intensified missile attacks on Cyprus, alleging an increased U.S. military presence on the island. Locals in Akrotiri and the nearby villages woke up to sirens blaring during the night and fled the area, with some seeking refuge at Limassol or the Cypriot army barracks. Local media described the confusion of not knowing whether to stay or leave, fearing for their own and their children's safety. The area will remain evacuated on Monday, and there will be a new assessment of the situation on Tuesday, today. I don't know the situation, what they determined, since today is Tuesday, but yeah. Along with that, we actually have a misfit that lives, I think she said she's like 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes, somewhere in there away from the base. And she's okay, but yeah, she's right there. So we have misfits that are right there in regards to that. Then we have this. Greece dispatches 2 frigates and F-16s to Cyprus after second strike on Akrotiri. Joint defense doctrine activated. This is Defense Minister. Can I make that bigger for you guys? There we go. Defense Minister Nikos Dendias announced that Greece is sending 2 frigates and a pair of F-16 fighter jets to Cyprus following a second drone strike near the British base of Akrotiri. The Greek Defense Minister will travel to Cyprus tomorrow, that would be today, after speaking with Prime Minister Mitsotakis. I got nothing. A decision by the Government Council of Foreign Affairs and Defense activates the Unified Greece-Cyprus Defense Doctrine. So now we got a situation involving Cyprus and a British airbase that are getting hit and drawn into this. So again, talking about more extensions that continue to move forward. Let's keep it going, keep it rolling. Anyways, everybody's got to argue about something, right? Nobody can just let it go. Always got to argue. All right, it says Trump says war could last weeks and offered contradictory visions of new regime. This is interesting. There's some interesting tidbits in here. It says President Trump said on Sunday that the U.S. military intends to sustain its assault on Iran for 4 to 5 weeks. Again, 48 hours, 1 week, 2 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks, and now we're being told that it could be longer. If necessary, insisting that it won't be difficult for Israel and the United States to maintain the intensity of the battle, even as he warned of possibility of more American casualties. In a brief telephone interview with the New York Times, Mr. Trump offered several seemingly contradictory visions of how power might be transferred to a new government, or even whether the existing Iranian power structure would run that government or be overthrown. Among the options, he suggested that an outcome similar to what he engineered in Venezuela was an outcome similar to what he engineered in Venezuela, in which only the top leader was removed during an American military strike and much of the rest of the government remained in place, but newly willing to work pragmatically with the United States. If he honestly believed that Iran could be dealt with like Venezuela, he is literally the dumbest, most unintelligent president that we've ever had. If he actually believes that, there's no possible way that Iran would be dealt with like Venezuela. There's no way. That doesn't even take you could ask a 6-year-old and they would tell you that it can't be done that way. Again, if it's true, if he actually believes that. It says, asked how long the United States and Israel would keep up with this level of attacks, he responded, well, we intended 4 to 5 weeks. Not from what you said at the beginning. So another lie. It won't be difficult, Mr. Trump said. We have tremendous amounts of ammunition. You know, we have ammunition stored all over the world or in different countries. The reason why he's saying that is because we're burning through the stockpile, that we have to start taking ammunition from other locations all around the world in order to use them in the Middle East because they've burnt through their stockpile so fast. That's the thing that, again, I talked about that on Sunday. I know, right? On Sunday. We did a spontaneous hour-long live stream on Sunday for those who made it. If you didn't see that, go check it out. It's under the live stream thing, where it was just kind of free-formed, and I just went over a bunch of little stuff and answered questions. But that was something that I explained on Sunday when it comes to this. Is what Iran is doing is they're firing their cheap, just homemade stuff that 3 drunk guys in a garage in Alabama could make. What they're doing is they're firing that stuff that costs $100 to make. Seriously. And what they're doing is they're launching the stuff that costs $100 to make, and the United States is using interceptors that cost $4.6 million. And they're using those to shoot down the $100 garage made stuff. And so what they're doing is they're trying to just burn through the stockpile before they even start using their good stuff. They haven't even started they've launched a few, but they haven't even started launching their big stuff. And so that's what's interesting, is they're using this to burn through the smaller stuff. And so when he's saying we have ammunition that we can pull in from all over the world, that says that they're running low. And that's not something new. If you go back, I don't have an article to show you, but there's multiple articles, and U.S. officials have confirmed after the 12-day war, after what happened last year, they were already depleted on their stockpiles of interceptors, defensive weapons. They were already depleted. And now they started this with not much room to produce anything more, which means they're running even lower on this stuff. So that's what Iran is doing, is they're using their territory and their landscape to shelter themselves, hide their good stuff, hide themselves, and to move their launchers, which are just pickup trucks and box trucks, all around, which makes it hard to follow. And they're shooting this cheap stuff to just burn through expensive interceptors that take a long time to build it. So very interesting. We'll get to that in just a second. Even further, it says he made no mention of the Pentagon's concerns that the conflict could either further deplete reserves that military strategists have said are critical to retain in scenarios like the conflict over Taiwan or Russian incursions to Europe. Earlier on Sunday, Iran's top national security official, Ali Larijani, there's that name, said that an interim committee would run the country until a successor to the supreme leader was chosen. Larijani oversaw the abruptly ended negotiations for the nuclear deal with the United States, and in January was targeted in sanctions by the Trump administration for his role in the crackdown on anti-government protesters. Mr. Trump did not answer questions about whether he thought Larijani could lead the government of Iran, which in a different interview, which I don't have available right now, but in a different interview, he did hint at that would be their choice. Interesting. We'll get to Larijani in a second. Let's talk about pulling in munitions from around the world. This is the Chosen Daily. It says U.S. considers relocating THAAD Patriot missiles to the Middle East. South Korea-based systems may be moved amid prolonged U.S. military operation against Iran. So now we're getting reports that the United States might be moving their South Korean munitions over to the Middle East. It says U.S. President Donald Trump, in an interview with the New York Times on the 1st, predicted that the military operation against Iran, named Epic Fury, would last 4 to 5 weeks. However, there are observations that if the U.S. airstrikes on Iran prolonged beyond this period, U.S. military assets and troops stationed in South Korea on the Korean Peninsula could be deployed to the Middle East. Does that sound like we got a big stockpile to you? Experts believe that air defense assets of the U.S. Forces Korea, such as Patriot and THAAD terminal high-altitude area defense systems, as well as surveillance and reconnaissance assets like the MQ-9 Reaper unmanned aerial vehicles permanently stationed at Gunsan Air Base in South Korea last year, could be among the assets to be relocated. In June of last year, prior to Midnight Hammer, operation to strike Iranian nuclear facilities, the U.S. cynically deployed 3 out of 8 USFK Patriot batteries to the Middle East to prepare for potential retaliatory attacks from Iran. The over 500 USFK personnel and Patriot batteries that were mobilized at the time returned to South Korea in October of last year. Experts also believe that the THAAD battery in Seongju, North Gyeongsang province, and its intercept missiles could be deployed to the Middle East. Just before the outbreak of the war, the British Financial Times, citing a U.S. military official, reported that up to 150 THAAD missiles were expended during last year's 12-day war, expressing concerns over potential missile shortages if the war prolongs. Shin Jong-woo, Secretary General of the Korea Defense Research Forum, stated, if the airstrikes prolong, the U.S. will likely utilize the combat power and assets of the USFK. Im Cheol-gun, a senior research fellow at the Korea Research Institute of Strategy, remarked, since South Korea is also facing ballistic missile threats from North Korea, the deployment of USFK air defense assets to the Middle East could pose significant problems from our perspective. So now we're opening up a different situation over there that would leave South Korea hanging. Interesting how this keeps going. Now, this is something else to keep in mind. I just wanted to pull this up because we need to keep this forefront. Rare earth shortages worsen in the U.S. aerospace chips despite trade truce. This is from February 27th. So this was literally the day of the attack. So suppliers to U.S. aerospace and semiconductor firms face worsening rare earth shortages, with 2 turning away some clients, industry insiders say, weeks before Trump is expected to meet with Xi Jinping for a summit at Beijing. The shortage center on rare earths such as yttrium and scandium, niche members of the family of 17 elements which play tiny but vital roles in defense technology. Aerospace and semiconductors are almost entirely produced in China. While Beijing has allowed many rare earths exports to resume since it imposed restrictions in April last year, shipments of the materials still rarely make it to the U.S., despite the October detente with Washington Chinese customs data show. Why did I bring that up? Why is that important? Because all of the rare earth material that is used to make these United States defense systems comes from China. So we're already in a shortage of materials. So everybody's talking about, well, we can produce these things at this rate. That's great. But if you don't have the materials to produce them, then you can't produce them. So this idea that we can start producing things to rebuild the stockpile while this war is going on probably can't happen because you can't get more rare earth material to make those things from China. Interesting. So that's something to also keep in mind that's not being talked about when it comes to the armament stockpile of the United States. Now let's move into the Gulf states. This is some very critical information that could affect, well, actually I'll say will because it already is, but will affect us all around the world. U.S. stonewalling request by Gulf states to replenish interceptors. Sources say it says the U.S. is stonewalling requests by the Gulf states to replenish their air defense interceptors as pressure mounts on them to join the U.S. and Israel in their war on Iran. At least one Gulf state said had come under attack from Iran, asked U.S. officials about replenishing supplies that have been depleted since the joint U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran, but was brushed off. These are the Gulf states that the Trump family has done all those deals with that, they're so intertwined with. They're asking for defense by the U.S. because of the war they started, and the U.S. is brushing them off. They're not doing it, leaving them out to dry. In a separate case, another Gulf state responded to U.S. requests to use airbase in their country with inquiries about the U.S.'s commitment to their air defense systems. But the former U.S. official familiar with the conversation and the administration told that the Gulf states would be left wanting if they expect new supplies of interceptors. So now we have this issue when it comes to the stockpile. Trump is claiming, and Pete Hegseth and the administration is saying, we have more than enough stockpile. Then Trump comes out and says, we can start bringing munitions from all around the world, which is an indicator that we're short. Then we have the issue happening here where the Gulf states that are actually under contract for the United States to defend them are asking for replenishment for interceptors, which the United States is supposed to give them, and they're saying that they're not going to do it. Why would they not hand them over if they had them? Probably because they don't have enough. There has been so many indicators that says that the United States does not have enough defensive interceptors. And then we have this issue. Again, we went over the fact that Iran's firing their junk in order to burn through the expensive complex interceptors. But then on top of that, when they burn through those, they can start bringing out their high-tech stuff, which they've fired a couple so far, but bringing out their high-tech stuff with no defense there, and they can just start pummeling if we get to that point. Very interesting. Whatever munitions were produced, this is important, whatever munitions were produced in the last couple of months, we have shot several years' worth of production in the last few days, the former official said. Former U.S. military official. He says, whatever munitions were produced in the last couple months means nothing because we've shot several years' worth of production in just the last few days. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain have all been targeted with Iranian ballistic missiles and drones, but the countries closest to Iran, Bahrain, Qatar, and UAE have borne the brunt of the assaults. It says the UAE's interception rate is above 90% according to the government's tally. Take it with a grain of salt. It's official numbers. But THAAD and Patriot interceptors are costly and take years to make. The UAE has now burned through a significant chunk of the interceptor stockpile that took years to build. Neither the former U.S. Nor Western official said that they have formal denials said there have been formal denials, but the Gulf states have been discouraged from asking for refills. Fearless Mack said, the Middle East director at the Eurasia Group, citing U.S. sources, said that the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier was leaving the Mediterranean on Monday en route to the Gulf. That movement could suggest the Trump administration may be trying to address some of the Gulf states' security complaints. We have to wait and see what's happening with that. Now, this is where we start getting into serious stuff that might start affecting us. Big time. And it has to do with gas. Iran's new wave of attacks escalates threat to the world's largest oil and gas hubs. This is significant. Iran's retaliatory strikes on Gulf states are now threatening the world's largest oil and gas export hubs, marking a dangerous escalation from tanker harassment to direct attacks on energy infrastructure. We went over how something that they could target, they didn't target early, but something that they could, is energy infrastructure, oil production, oil fields, stuff like that. They've hit a few of them. But the problem is the Strait of Hormuz, they've all but pretty much closed it. Not necessarily because they're hitting all the ships going through it. It's because of insurance cancellations, companies not wanting to ship things through because several boats have been sunk by Iran. There's only a ship every once in a while that's making its way through, and those are, I believe, being reported are either Russian or Chinese ships. Everything else is stopped. And so what happens is you can only store so much oil. If you can't get it out and you're out of storage, you can't produce anymore. So they're having to halt production because that situation is currently unraveling. Keep going. The shift in attacks raises fear of severed supplies as Saudi Arabia and Qatar halted operations at key plants. Now, this is something to keep in mind on numbers, but it's important. Brent crude, so crude oil market, opened sharply higher on Monday at $81.49 per barrel, then dropped down to $77. Then Brent pushed back closer to $80 following the news that Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura refinery had been hit. Following the strike on a Qatari liquefied natural gas plant and subsequent halt in production, European gas prices surged to their highest in 4 years. 45% increase because of this in Europe. I know I got some Europeans watching. You guys are getting it worse than us, but ours went up here too. Sustained attacks on production fields or pipelines would add a significant risk premium and could push oil prices well into $90 to $100 range. You know, remember when we had the issue of, you know, in some places $5 to $8 per gallon. That's possibly what's coming again because of this. Iranian strikes on energy facilities at Ras Laffan industrial city forced Qatar Energy to halt operations at the world's largest LNG liquefied natural gas plant, which supplies about 20% of the global output. Iran struck the world's largest natural gas plant, which produces 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, and shut it down. Yeah, significant. Key energy facilities impacted. Saudi Arabia's Ras Tanura, run by Saudi Aramco, halted operations at its $550,000 barrel per day refinery following a reported drone strike. Ras Tanura is not only a major refining plant, but also home to the kingdom's largest offshore crude loading terminal, which is critical for the world's largest exporter to meet its supply commitments. Kuwait's Mina Al Ahmadi refinery, with a capacity of around 346,000 barrels per day, was also affected after debris reportedly fell on parts of the plant. Oman's southern Duqm port, which lies outside the Strait of Hormuz, was targeted by drones on Saturday, highlighting the vulnerability of alternatives to the world's most contentious choke point. It is also close to newly built 255,000 barrel per day refinery. In the UAE, Jebel Ali port, which is adjacent to the condensate refinery and power facilities, was struck, impacting logistics and raising concerns. Qatar said that Ras Laffan Industrial City Energy Complex had also come under attack and halted operations. The move is hugely significant given that Qatar Energy is the biggest producer of LNG in the world, accounting for 20% of the supply. It operates 14 LNG trains with a total annual production capacity of 77 million tons, making it indispensable to global gas supplies, particularly to Asian and European buyers. Guys, I know some of this stuff may sound, boring. It's not going to be boring when you show up at the gas pump and your gas is $4 to $5 higher. I'm telling you, this stuff is very important. Karg Island. On the Iranian side, Karg Island, the country's main crude export terminal, was targeted by U.S.-Israeli strikes. Damage to the facility would directly constrain Iranian imports, which averaged 2 billion barrels per day. Not only that, Iraq reduces oil output. More cuts to come if Hormuz disruption persists, Iraqi oil officials say. Says Iraq has cut oil production by nearly 1.5 million barrels a day, and those cuts could widen more than 3 million barrels per day within days as the country runs out of storage and cannot export crude due to the Iran crisis. As of Tuesday, Iraq had cut production from the Rumaili oil field by 700,000 barrels per day, from the West Korna 2 field by 460,000 barrels per day, and from the Mason field by 325,000 barrels per day. That output could grow from over 3 million barrels per day if oil tankers cannot move freely through the Strait of Hormuz. and reach loading points. The oil ministry said later in that day the reduction of its crude oil production, owing to the halt in exports after the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, would not affect operations at its refineries, which means the refineries are fine, but they have to turn them off because they don't have storage, because they can't move the stuff. Export disruptions from the Strait of Hormuz closure pushed storage to critical levels in Iraq's southern ports. And the Strait of Hormuz was closed for a fourth day after Iran attacked 5 ships, choking off a key artery accounting for 20% of global oil and liquefied natural gas supply. On top of that, it doesn't stop there. Chevron declares force majeure as Israel shuts Leviathan gas field. So now Israeli gas field shut down. Chevron has declared force majeure at Israel's Leviathan natural gas field after the government ordered a temporary suspension of production on security grounds, marking the second time in less than a year that hostilities with Iran have erupted eastern Mediterranean gas flows. Israel's energy ministry directed operator Chevron to shut down Leviathan following joint U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran and subsequent retaliatory action across the region. This is significant because Leviathan is Israel's largest gas field, supplying Israel, Egypt, and Jordan. And you're talking about 8.1 billion cubic meters of gas to all 3 markets. This stuff is significant. I already noticed as soon as I started talking about this, 100 people left because it always happens. That's boring. I don't need to hear about that. Well, guess what? When you show up to your gas pump and you're complaining about the prices of it, this is why. So I was trying to tell you what it was, but I know a lot of people find it boring. But this stuff is very key because this plays a part with not only your gas pumps, but you're talking about tankers and shipping containers that are moving very important food products and consumer products and all of these other things that go on our shelves. So when you start running out of food products and supply chain issues and all that stuff, a lot of it has to do because there's not enough oil moving around. Or if you do have supplies sitting on your store shelves, but the prices are going up on all of that, that has to do with the fact that oil prices are going up, which means gas prices are going up, which means the shipping cost is going up, which means you have to pay for the shipping cost. So all of this stuff, and this doesn't just affect the United States, this affects Asian countries, Europe, Canada, Australia, Mexico, different parts of Africa. This affects all of them because all that stuff gets shipped out to there. And so what you're talking about is what is happening in the Middle East with all of this is not only affecting how much the price of gas that goes into your car, but it's also affecting what is sitting on your store shelves and the cost of what is sitting on your store shelves. This is supply chain issues all the way down. It affects everything. Along with that, speaking of other supply chain situation, world's top container carriers revise sailings to avoid Mideast. So this starts playing a part in all of this. Make this a little bit bigger for you guys. It says the world's biggest container shipping companies are revising their sailing schedules as the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran threatens to disrupt ocean freight in the Persian Gulf region, a vital supply chain hub for dozens of big American and European manufacturers. Some carriers are canceling bookings temporarily, skipping some port calls, warning of delays, and implementing surcharges to transport containers through the conflict zone. So here's just a few of them. MSC, the number one container line, said Sunday it's suspending all bookings for global cargo to the Middle East until further notice. The number one shipping company suspended all bookings on cargo with the Middle East. Maersk, the Copenhagen-based company, said Monday it's suspending refrigerated and dangerous shipments into and out of the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia until further notice. This also effective immediately as the suspension of all new bookings between the Indian subcontinent and several Gulf states. CMA CGM. On Monday, the Marseille, France-based carrier said that it's suspending hazardous cargoes booking immediately to Iraq, Bahrain, Kuwait, Yemen, Qatar, Oman, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt's port of Ain Sokan, Djibouti, Sudan, and Eritrea. CMA also said Sunday it's stopped refrigerated cargo bookings in the Gulf region and also suspended trips to the Suez Canal. Costco, China's not Costco, Costco, different company, not the big warehouse here in the western side of the United States. China's biggest carrier said Sunday vessels that entered the Gulf and completed operations there have been instructed to proceed to safe waters and hover for anchor. The Hamburg, Germany Hapag-Lloyd firm joined Maersk in stopping Hormuz crossings and rerouting ships away from the Red Sea. And Ocean Network Express, the Singapore-based company, said Monday it's immediately and temporarily suspending acceptance of new booking for cargo moving both to and from the Persian Gulf until further notice. That is a lot of major shipping halted. This will have an effect. Plus this, risks of Western aluminum supply rise as Iran war escalates. The region is also the Middle East region is also a significant producer of aluminum, accounting for over 8% of global output last year. Over 5 million metric tons of metal are shipped through the Hormuz Strait each year by smelters in Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. Huge amounts of bauxite and alumina travel the other way to feed the smelters. None of these plants have yet been directly targeted in the escalating hostilities, but Qatar Aluminum, jointly owned by Norway's Norsk Hydro, and Qatar Energy already face the possible closure because power supplies have been hit by the halt to the country's liquefied natural gas production. The longer the Strait of Hormuz is blocked, the greater the threat to Western manufacturers. So 8% of the global aluminum supply has been halted as well. And with all of that, the UAE and Qatar urge allies to help Trump find off-ramp on Iran. United Arab Emirates and Qatar have privately lobbied allies to help them persuade President Donald Trump to reach for an off-ramp that would keep the U.S. military operations against Iran short. So behind the scenes, the Gulf states, who are just sick of this by now, because everything has been upended for them, are apparently trying to get this to end, even though the United States is saying, nope, we're planning for this to go beyond a month. The countries are seeking to build a wide coalition to advance a swift and diplomatic end to the conflict, the people said, in order to prevent regional escalation and prolonged energy price shock. The Qatari assessment shared with Bloomberg News warned that if shipping lanes in the region remain severely disrupted by the middle of this week, so Wednesday, tomorrow, if these shipping lanes remain disrupted, which they still are, by tomorrow, they would expect to see a more significant market reaction for natural gas prices than Monday's sharp spike, which means if this isn't done and over with tomorrow, which it's probably not going to be, expect your gas prices to go back up even further. That's what they're warning. Oh, man. Oh, man. Hopefully I'm not losing people with all this stuff. A lot of things, but this is how you disrupt the world. This is how you really shake up the world and cause serious issues you got people dying in the Middle East, lives being lost, and then what follows is a series of ripples and repercussions for others who prices go up and production goes down and things could really start shaking with all of that. Not to mention energy issues. Europe is already having massive energy issues as it is, but now further restrictions could start causing more problems over there, which means power starts going out. And I don't remember the exact statistic, but so many days with power outages results in a lot of people dying. I don't remember the exact statistics, but it's all very important. Grab some water real quick. 1 second. All right. Let's try and continue to get through this stuff. It's a lot going on, guys, I know. Now, one of the biggest things that you'll see swirling, I'm mainly seeing it when it comes to the right-wing stuff, and when I'm mainly seeing it when it comes to the MAGA. I don't know if it's being pushed in the church and the prophecy community yet, but probably will get there if it's not, is the concept that the reason why Trump has started this situation in the Middle East is to try and strangle oil production to China. Because the narrative out there is the United States is at war with China, and so they're making all these moves in order to hurt China and strangle them because China imports Iranian gas. There's been a lot of bad reports out there saying that this will absolutely hurt China and so on and so forth. I went digging. I spent time and went digging to get the details of what all effect that this would actually have on China. And I want to arm you guys with this information. So if you start seeing this, you know what is really going on. So Trump's attack on China's energy. Let's take a look. China is the world's largest importer of oil. It is indeed. But China also has one of the biggest stockpiles of oil, and it's reportedly over 1 billion barrels in their stockpile. So they import the most, but also have one of the biggest stockpiles, which means they're not just importing and burning through it. It means they hold it. What does that mean? Well, China receives 17% of their oil from Iran. Okay. But only 1.5% of China's energy actually comes from Iran. So if Trump is going over there to try and strangle the oil imports of Iran to China, it really doesn't mean much when it comes to that. So that's not really... If he's starting this war to strangle 1.5% of China's energy, that's really bad. And again, makes himself look like an idiot. But however, Japan and Philippines, who are allied with the United States, rely on the Strait of Hormuz for 90% of their oil. So this is actually hurting United States allies and not hurting China, which the narrative says he's at war with. China sits at 84.6% energy self-sufficiency, which means they can through self-sufficiency, they can provide 84.6% of their energy needs. And that's increasing 4.6% year over year, which means next year it'll go up 4.6%, which means they're over 90% at that point, or almost at 90% of their own self-sufficient energy needs. Also, increases in oil cost is being pushed as an attack on China, which means, if they're going to import oil from anybody else, they're going to have to pay a higher cost in order to get it. China can export from their stockpile at record profits while increasing domestic production, which means they can start producing more of their own oil and start selling some of that stockpile, which they don't need all of it. And they can actually make record profit, which means you're not hurting them financially either. Not to mention China neighbors Russia for an easy increase in oil trade. So they can just start importing more from Russia to fulfill what they're not getting from Iran. And the United States is still selling Venezuelan oil to China. So if the United States, if Trump was actually trying to strangle China's oil supply, why on earth would they be selling oil to China? See what I mean? You see how the narrative falls apart when somebody goes and finds what is actually happening? Finds out the truth and the facts? The whole narrative explodes. So if you hear that narrative, you know it's a bunch of bunk. No point in even hanging on to it. So just wanted to go ahead and do that. Now, let's get to Larijani, shall we? Because that's a name that I think we should pay attention to, and I'm still going to be paying attention to. And so let's get just a little bit of information about this guy, shall we? Ali Larijani, Iranian security leader, says they will not negotiate with the United States. See, yeah, can I make this bigger? There we go. The Iranian security chief Ali Larijani affirms that Iran will not negotiate with the United States. Through a social network account on Twitter, Larijani, one of the country's most influential figures, responded to press reports indicating that Tehran had contacted the United States through intermediaries requesting the resumption of talks. So a whole bunch of Western media news agencies came out with a report stating that Larijani and Iran had reached out to the United States to talk about a ceasefire. False. Larijani came out himself and said, this is false. We will not negotiate with the United States. Sounds like he's calling the shots, doesn't it? U.S. President Donald Trump has plunged, this is him talking, plunged the region into chaos with his false hopes and is now worried about further losses of U.S. troops, added Larijani, Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, in the publication. Iran, unlike the United States, has prepared for a long war, he said. This sounds like a dude who's actually starting to call the shots over there in Iran. Well, let's just keep going. What else can we find out about this guy? Go away. Stupid thing. Ali Larijani masterminded the massacre, says former official. So Ali Larijani apparently is the one who orchestrated the massacre of Iranian protesters. Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, has been at the center of the January 2026 crackdown. The source says Larijani is positioning himself. Pay attention to this, guys, because this might be very key in the future. The source says Larijani is positioning himself for the post-Khamenei era, using his close ties with the IRGC commanders and intelligence agencies, along with his family's connections to senior clerics, to build support across different factions and prepare to lead the system after Khamenei's death. Larijani comes from a powerful clerical family. His father, Mirza Hashim Amoli, was a well-known Shia Grand Ayatollah and a leading figure at the Qom seminary before the revolution. His eldest brother, Mohammed Haved Larijani, served as the senior diplomat and deputy foreign minister, while his younger brother, Sadek Larijani, is a seminary professor in the Qom and a former chief justice of the Islamic Republic. Sadek Larijani is frequently mentioned as a possible successor of Khamenei. So this dude is bloodthirsty, has no problem killing people, is not willing to negotiate with the United States, hates Israel, and comes from a very powerful family that has a serious background, both on the political and the religious side. Khamenei has never shown decisive support for Larijani, who was even disqualified from running in several presidential elections. However, according to the former official who remains in contact with Larijani's team, it appears that following the failure of the Ahmadinejad experience and the inability to hardline Paydari, the resistance faction, to attract broad support, Khamenei is now backing Larijani's plan to consolidate various groups within the system and deal decisively with opponents. Larijani sees his approach as resembling Check this out. Larijani sees his approach as resembling the security, cultural, and economic policies pursued by Deng Xiaoping in China during the 1980s. The source says that the killings of protesters in January 2026 were modeled on the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing, when the Chinese military is believed to have killed between 3,000 and 10,000 protesters, an event that still serves as a warning to opponents of the Chinese government. Larijani structured his response to the Iranian protesters in January to that of Tiananmen Square. There's more. New York Times confirmed Iran's Wire report on Larijani expanding power and new responsibilities. The New York Times reports in recent months Ali Larijani has emerged as the Islamic Republic's most powerful executive figure in practice, serving as Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council. According to the newspaper, he has overseen the harsh crackdown on nationwide protests and now plays a central role in steering the country through deep internal unrest and the looming threat of war. Iran Wire previously reported in an executive scoop citing a former Islamic Republic official who spoke through an intermediary that Ali Larijani, then Secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, was the chief architect of the January 2026 crackdown on the killing of protesters. But as per a report published by the New York Times on February 22nd, 2026, Ali Khamenei had handed over much of the day-to-day management of the country to Ali Larijani as Iran grappled with the nationwide protests and the threat of military confrontation with the United States and Israel. So Ali Khamenei, the Ayatollah, had already handed over pretty much all the day-to-day business of Iran to Larijani. Gets better. The report adds that Larijani's role had grown significantly in recent months. Beyond managing unrest at home, he is now involved in coordinating with allies such as Russia, engaging with regional governments, including Erdogan's Turkey, and overseeing sensitive nuclear negotiations with Washington. He sat at the table, the negotiating table, with Trump's administration and Jared Kushner. Could it be that they were working something out behind the scenes the whole time as they were negotiating on this quote-unquote nuclear situation? Now, I don't know, but it's certainly possible, especially since Trump has hinted that this is the guy that he wants. According to the New York Times, he is also tasked with contingency planning, including preparing the country's administrative framework in the event of a potential war with the United States. According to the New York Times, Larijani has moved into Khamenei's closest circle of trusted figures in crisis situations, including the possible death or assassination of the supreme leader, which they're now declaring him to be a martyr. And he was seeking martyrdom because he was already going to die within a couple of years of cancer. Most likely wasn't going to see this year out as it was. Larijani is seen as one of the leading candidates to step in and oversee the country's affairs. This guy is somebody to watch. He just seems like the perfect dude to be a part of future prophecy regarding Iran. But we'll see. We don't know. I still think it's a name to watch. We also have this. This is important because he can't be Ayatollah. That's important to remember. So he can't be that position. He can be the guy underneath him doing all the stuff, though. What about the Ayatollah? Well, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's son emerges as leading choice to be his successor. If Mojtaba Khamenei is chosen by Iran's senior clerics, it may signal a victor for hardliners. This dude is nothing like his dad. And I mean that in the presence of he will kill. Remember, Ali Khamenei was moderate for Iran. His son is ready to pull triggers and push buttons. And you team him up with Larijani, you got an even worse Iran in the future. The senior cleric's responsible. Yeah, Proton Girl, I heard that too, but apparently he's still alive because they were just met today about this. Interesting. I heard that too. The senior clerics responsible for selecting Iran's next supreme leader met on Tuesday, today, to deliberate, and the son of the slain former leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei emerged as the clear frontrunner, according to 3 Iranian officials familiar with the deliberations. The officials said that the clerics were considering announcing that the son, Mojtaba Khamenei, would be his father's successor as early as Wednesday morning, but that some had expressed reservations, fearing that it could expose him as a target for the United States and Israel. The clerics, known as the Assembly of Experts, held 2 virtual meetings, one in the morning and one in the evening. According to the officials, Israel struck a building in Qom, one of Shia Islam's main seats of power, where the assembly was scheduled to meet and elect a new supreme leader, but the building was empty. He was slated to become the successor for a long time, Mr. Nassar said, but for the past 2 years it seemed to have dropped off from the radar. If he is elected, it suggests it is a much more hardline Revolutionary Guard side of the regime that is now in charge. Mojtaba Khamenei, 56, is an influential, if reclusive figure who has operated in the shadows of the empire of his father, who was killed on Saturday in the U.S.-Israeli strikes in Iran. Mr. Khamenei is known for having close ties to the Revolutionary Guards. The Guards, according to the 3 officials, pushed for his appointment, arguing that he had the qualifications needed to steer Iran in a time of crisis. Oh, man. It's so interesting. We're not going to be able to get through everything tonight, but I got just a little bit more that I'll show you. But I do want to point this out. It's so interesting. Again, for those who, been around the channel and whatnot, we get a lot of flack for how we operate. We do. How we operate is we just are trying to see what is really going on. Try not to predict and speculate on things that we have no knowledge of how it can unfold, just so we are not caught off guard when things happen. And when we come across that information, a lot of it is hard to hear. I'll tell you what, man, there's some times when I'm looking through this, I think I know something, and then I see something else, and I'm like, I don't know, and I keep looking, and I could verify it, and it just turns everything upside down on what I thought it was. I've gone through that so many times. It's uncomfortable. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. But it's how we should operate. It's how we are to pay attention to what's going on and really see what's happening so we're not surprised. We're not emotionally on a roller coaster of things. But what I have seen after this event took place, and I have kind of looked around what's going on in the church and stuff like that, seeing and I don't necessarily want to put it this way because it makes it sound a certain way, but I'll try and clarify it. Seeing the pastors and the churches and the prophecy teachers that are super pro-Israel, and we're pro God's people, God's land over here, obviously, but we're not pro political Israel. But for those that are super pro-Israel, that's what they push hardcore on what they talk about. They are looking at what's going on over there, and they're practically celebrating. They're pushing information that has, for the most part, been verified to be false. But because it sustains their agenda and their beliefs and everything that makes them happy, they push it. And they're just celebrating what's going on. And they are none the wiser to the realities of what this situation has brought on. They're not, because they haven't looked. They find, based on the news outlets that best support what they believe, they celebrate according to that because they're getting fed bad information that swings in one direction. And it's so dangerous to operate because if this does go through, if his son takes the Ayatollah position, takes that supreme leader spot, and then Larijani comes in and he starts leading the day-to-day in the political and the military and all this stuff underneath him. Boy, oh boy, it's going to be a rude awakening when they find out what those two can do based on the information that we've seen. It's not going to be sunshine and rainbows at that point. And I'm not saying this to rain on somebody's parade. I'm not saying this to be doom and gloom. I'm not saying this to depress everybody. I'm bringing you the reality of the situation. I'm warning you that if this does go through, which some of these guys really seem like this is going to be it. If this goes through, it's not going to be puppy dogs and kitty cats. But you're not going to be caught off guard if it does happen. You're not going to be caught off guard if it does happen. I mean, for those who have been around, you guys see the stuff that I pull up on screen. I mean, how many different sources have we gone through tonight? With all the things that we've talked about, how many different sources? Am I just drawing it from the same 5 news sources? I'm drawing it from everywhere. And I'm vetting this stuff, cross-referencing it with other things to make sure that it's good. But look at how many sources we're going. We don't have a favorite around here. We really don't. We're just trying to see what's really going on. That requires us to go everywhere else. And we definitely have to operate that way. Again, I sound like a broken record, but I think it's important. All right, let's finish off here. Again, we're not going to be able to get to everything, but I can move some of this stuff to Saturday and we can talk about it then. Let's just finish off with what's going on with the embassies and round this thing back in. All right. Drones hit U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, triggering fire as Iran ramps up attacks across Middle East. There's been an increase in attacks both from Iran and protesters against U.S. embassies all over the Middle East. And drones hit the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. And it says a fire erupted at the U.S. Embassy compounds in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, after 2 drones targeted the diplomatic quarter in the capital city. So the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh has been hit, Saudi Arabia. We also have this. Protesters try to storm Baghdad zone housing U.S. Embassy. It says hundreds of Iraqis attempted Sunday to storm Baghdad's fortified green zone where the U.S. Embassy is located. Their attempts have been thwarted so far, but they keep trying, a security source told AFP. AFP's journalists said protesters, some holding flags of pro-Iran armed groups, threw stones at security forces who responded with tear gas. Local media reported protests in other provinces in southern Iraq. So Iraq is starting to become uneasy, unrestful over there. And several Iran-backed Iraqi arms groups said Saturday that they will not remain neutral and will defend the Islamic Republic. So the Baghdad U.S. Embassy is getting hit by protesters, as well as there's a bunch of pockets of uprising happening in Iraq now, expanding the field. Then we have this one. At least 22 people killed in Pakistan as protesters try to storm U.S. consulate. The U.S. Marines had to come out and start shooting. It got that bad at the Pakistan embassy. Violent clashes between protesters and security forces in Pakistan's southern port city of Karachi and in the country's north left at least 22 people dead and more than 120 others injured as demonstrators supportive of the Iranian government attempted to storm a U.S. consulate on Sunday. In the north of the country, demonstrators attacked UN and government offices as well. As we know, Pakistan is aligned with Iran with all of this, so that's also something to keep in mind. So keep an eye on U.S. embassies, not only in the Middle East. Keep an eye on U.S. embassies in Europe, because there might be some stuff erupting at U.S. embassies in Europe as well. Definitely worth keeping an eye on. And with all of that, multiple U.S. embassies are telling Americans they cannot evacuate or help them get out of the Middle East. Literally, that's their job. And they're telling Americans that are trapped in the Middle East, we can't help you. Go chill at the McDonald's. We can't help you. That's what's going on. That's how well planned this whole thing was. American citizens across the Middle East are attempting to follow official advice and evacuate as conflict escalates in the region following U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran on Saturday. But multiple U.S. embassies have said that they are unable to help citizens trying to leave. The U.S. Embassy is not in a position at this time to evacuate or directly assist Americans in departing Israel, the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem said in a post on Twitter on Tuesday. So the Jerusalem Embassy can't even help them. If you choose to avail yourself of this option to depart, the U.S. government cannot guarantee your safety, said the U.S. Embassy. President Donald Trump was asked in the Oval Office on Tuesday why evacuations hadn't been planned beforehand and whether he would charter planes to evacuate Americans from the region. Trump largely didn't address the question other than to note how quickly the conflict broke out. So Trump, not even answering the question, basically said, we didn't plan to evacuate Americans. We didn't try to plan those things. We didn't think ahead. And the conflict broke out so quickly. Why did it break out quickly? Because they started it. They literally started the conflict. And he's saying that it broke out quickly. Later on Tuesday, a fire broke out at the U.S. consulate in Dubai after an Iranian drone struck an adjacent parking lot, and they're also saying that they can't get him out either. All right, and just a couple last notes before we finish this off. Take a look at a couple other small things that I think are worth knowing. Taking a look at the Iran situation. Oil and trade have been hit or halted. So we talked about that, where they've had to either shut down or a couple of refineries and production plants got hit. So they had to stop. That's issues with shipping. That's issues with oil. That's issues with gas, all that type of stuff. Something I want you to keep an eye on, which could really, really be a problem. Keep an eye on the desalination plants within the Gulf. The Gulf states rely heavily upon their desalination plants about, taking salt water and making it fresh water so they can, drink it and use it and stuff like that. If Iran starts hitting those plants, now you're going to have a serious problem because that means there's not even fresh water that's going to start getting to these Gulf states. This could be a problem. Keep an eye on the desalination plants. Claims, we kind of covered this, but I think it's worth going over. Claims that Iran is running out of launchers. Shahed drones and basic missiles use low-cost pickup trucks and box trucks. So Iran literally, they just take a basic pickup truck and overnight they can just make it a launcher for their rockets and whatnot. Box trucks, they just take the sidings off of that thing and they can stack, I think, like 5 or 6 of these drones in there and launch them that way. And they can just drive them all over the place. They can drive them into their tunnels, through the mountains, all that type of stuff. Missiles use, their more advanced missiles use, obviously, advanced launchers, but those have barely been used so far. We're still waiting to see when or if they're going to bust out the big guns. The plan is evolving to arm opposition groups, stir up chaos, and create a massive civil war in Iran. We covered that. You're looking at Iraq 2.2 or 2.0 at that point. We'll see what happens. Again, we know the position that Iran has in the future. So when it comes to Bible prophecy. And last but not least, I said we would get to this. I want to point this out. Keep close eye on Bahrain. We've already seen protests jumping up. The reason why this is important is because it's Sunni-controlled government, monarchy. But the majority of the people there are Shia, and they have been under the thumb of the Sunni monarchy. They don't like each other. They don't like each other at all, which means this is fostering a potential uprising condition where there might be regime change in Bahrain, depending on if they take the opportunity or if the opportunity presents itself. So this is definitely something to keep an eye on, is what's going on in Bahrain. All right, everything else we'll have to save for Saturday. We don't have time for it. So, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of information. I'm telling you guys, the flood of bad information is insane, to say the least. But again, our job is to warn people. And when we have that ability to warn people, and we can warn people correctly and beforehand, it gives us a better opportunity to be able to share the gospel, which is what we are called to do. And that should be our main focus, is to get people to Jesus, because he's the only one that can offer hope, only one that can offer salvation. Please be praying for everybody involved. Everybody. That even includes the enemy. Pray for everybody that they find salvation through Jesus Christ, because as we know, God does not want anyone to perish, even those we hate most. Interesting perspective. And we are to share the gospel with as many people as we can, which is as simple as ABC. A is we admit that that we're sinners. This admittance is an act of repentance, which is a changing of mind, metanoia. It's about turning from Christ, or turning from self to Christ. And it's through repentance that allows us to have true belief in Jesus Christ, because how can we believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior if we don't know why we need him? And that's why repentance allows us access to true belief. We believe that Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only, and he lived the perfect, sinless life, which means he was the only one qualified to carry the sins of the world upon his shoulders to the cross, where he was crucified and he died in my position. It should have been me. But because there's power in the blood of Jesus Christ, and he did exactly as he said, promised, and prophesied, he defeated death and rose again on the third day. For all who believe in him shall not perish, but live forever in his presence and in his glory. The glory is his. The work is finished. And he did it. When he was on that cross, he said to Telestai, it is finished. And so when we place our belief in him, we place our faith and our belief in Christ Jesus, we place our faith and our belief in his death, burial, and resurrection, we place it within his spilled blood and the finished work upon that cross. And C, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation, we are indwelt with the Holy Spirit, and we get a supernatural gift of prayer, which allows us to communicate directly with the Heavenly Father. And we say, Lord God, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here during these times where they are dark, evil, deceptive, trialing times, but yet we understand that we are blessed to be able to see these things, to witness what is going on in these last days, because we are truly watching the world unfold exactly as you described it would. And we are seeing the stepping stones and the foreshadows to the coming prophecy that will eventually occur during the day of the Lord. God, give us the ability to be able to see through the deceptions, to see through the waves of bad information and all those who seek to murder the truth. Allow us to see through these things and actually witness what's going on so we can be better watchmen as you have commanded us to be. God, give us the strength and the boldness to preach the name of Jesus in the darkest of places. And we thank you, Lord Jesus, for coming and giving your life so that we may live. And we say, Lord Jesus, please come soon. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. Do we have any questions? We got a couple questions. Let's knock some of these out real quick. Pick a Weeds says, Zach, have you done anything about Michael Yon? No. Nope, I have not. Yeah, can't help you there. Sorry, Pick a Weeds. Let's see. Patrick, I'm a little surprised to not hear any cyber attack activity between Israel, Iran, US. I've seen some stuff out there. I haven't reported on it because I can't confirm it. But I've seen some stuff that there has been some cyber stuff happening between the two of them. Specifically, Iran messing with US radars and stuff like that. I can't confirm it though, so I haven't really reported on it. Other than that, I haven't really seen much. I've seen some stuff coming out, people saying, Iran's going to cyber attack the United States or cyber attack Europe or something like that. Again, no way of confirming it. So yeah, I've just seen rumors and stuff, but nothing confirming. So not sure. Amanda, question. Do you have an opinion on Catherine Austin Fitts? Thoughts that Iran targeted because their banking system doesn't conform to the Rockefeller Rothschilds banking system. Not a fan of Catherine Austin Fitts at all. I believe she's a limited hangout person. I don't trust the information that she puts out. She's got bad connections, bad history that I don't trust. She claims to be a Christian, but she pushes New Age religious spirituality stuff. So I don't trust what's going on. Plus, she likes to steer the spotlight in a certain direction and avoid other directions. There's a lot of people like that that I point out. Another one is like Whitney Webb. She will do everything that she possibly can to point the spotlight towards Israel, avoiding all connections to things like Russia and whatnot, which that's always a good sign to me that if you're not willing to report on the wholesale, then and only on the partial sale, then I can't trust the information that you're putting out. I don't trust Catherine Austin Fitts. I don't. Is this about taking down the Rockefeller Rothschild banking system? The only way that you can do that is boots on the ground, and you would need a complete regime change, which is not something that they're looking at right now. So I don't see anything that fits that perspective either, but maybe in the future. Abby, normal question. What is the age of accountability? That's a question that we can spend a long time on. A lot of people do. But just to simply put it, age of accountability is the age that you are consciously able to make the decision to give your life to Christ. There's a lot of talk about what age that actually is, debate on what it is. We don't know. It's nothing but speculation. The Bible doesn't tell us what the age of accountability is. But it's one of those things where, like, when I applied it to the girls that may or may not have been killed in Iran because of that strike, those were very young elementary school girls who were clearly not old enough to make that decision. So that's what it is. It's the same way with, like, if a child dies in the womb or comes out and dies, just a few days after birth, they're instantly in heaven because they're not at the age of accountability. They can't make that decision themselves. So that's what that is. Doc, question. If Iranian Navy destroyed as per Trump, how can Iran close the Strait of Hormuz? So the Iranian Navy has not been destroyed. Their larger ships were hit and taken out. There's still some that are there, so it's not fully destroyed. They also have a gigantic fleet of very small, you know how like they use box trucks and pickup trucks and stuff to launch rockets? They also have a very small, or a fleet of very small speedboats and yachts that are equipped to start launching those rockets from there too, because they don't require a large platform. Those haven't even been deployed yet. The other thing is being able to hit the Strait of Hormuz. They don't need ships to close it. All they need is to be able to have the ability to launch rockets, or they have launchers that are in the sides of the mountains. It's kind of like, the old school pirate ships where they have the cannon ports on the side. Well, Iran has built cannon ports or rocket ports on the sides of the mountains that they can open up these doors and start launching rockets out through them. And that allows them to hit the ships as well. All of those are still functional from what I believe. But again, I have limited knowledge, but they don't need ships to be able to close the strait as long as they're able to hit targets, which they've hit 6 or 7 and they've sunk 2. So they're doing just fine with that. Doc, this is the last question. What is the news source for the Larijani article? There's a couple of them. There's Iran Wire was one, and then I can't remember the name of the other one because it's some obscure site. I would have to go back and look. So those were the 2 that I did. Iran Wire is one on that one. All right. That's all we got. Sweet. Thank you guys for joining me today. Again, pray for all those involved over there and keep your head on a swivel. So, usual spiel, if you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So please like, share, subscribe, especially right now. Proton Girl, is that all? I have more, but we don't have enough time. I'll move it to Saturday. But please like, share, subscribe, especially right now with all the crazy chaos happening right now. Again, I'm doing my absolute best that I can in Jesus' name to get the most confirmed and factual information that I can. So hopefully we can reach people with that stuff. Liking, sharing, and subscribing helps do that. Follow along on Rumble and Telegram if you would like to. Those channels are available. Rumble for backup channel, and then Telegram for other things that I can't put in video format. So follow along there if you want to. Best place to stay up to date, of course, is the WretchedWatchmen.com website. Bookmark that website so you're always in the know. And you'll find the latest podcasts and live streams, the announcements, as well as the free book to download is there as well. So go ahead and do that. And then last but not least, if you guys would like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below, CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. Again, you guys are the ones that make this run. You guys are the ones that do it. And you allow it to be free and 100% available to everybody at no cost. And so thank you guys for your support and your blessings. Thank you for making this work. So, all right, guys, that's all I got. Hang in there. Keep looking up. Keep in prayer. If the Lord does not come back by Saturday, same time, same place, I'll meet you guys right back here. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.